I just watched the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and it was pretty good. It was okay. It wasn't fantastic. It wasn't horrible. It was good. I enjoyed my time in the theater. I really wish some specific things would have been different, but I think it's an overall positive. So let's get into it, baby.
Oh, he's technically Mexican and 3/4 American, but for 3 generations he's got that nationality. Great-great-grandpa south, whose kids had kids then turned around. It's not what the show's about, but it's why he's Mexican technically.
It helps that he was raised in New Mexico, lived in Guadalajara for 2 years, speaks fluent Spanish with a bachelor's degree in language, and examine taquito.
Now, normally I wouldn't make a separate video on this, and I would leave the discussion for my weekly live stream on Sunday, Best Gen. But because this Sunday is Easter Sunday, the Lord's Day, we're taking the week off to spend more time with family and God. So we'll be back next Sunday, but I wanted to get my thoughts out now instead of waiting for 2 weeks. Now, I've played a lot of D&D. I played frequently with several different friend groups when I was a youth, and a few years ago I got back into it with a lot of college friends. I've done my fair share of playing and dungeon mastering, and I even craft my own terrain and paint figures. In fact, there are a few videos on this channel. If you want to check those out, they're super old and they didn't do very well and probably belong on a separate channel that I clearly don't have time for right now. But hey, if you become a channel member and support me, maybe in the future I'll have time to hire editors and I can also do more of that kind of content. It's just $1. You could you could do it. But anyway, I really enjoy D&D. I don't love the company, Wizards of the Coast. They have both D&D and Magic the Gathering, and they've done a lot of really problematic things recently, like firing a bunch of their artists for having the wrong political opinions and retroactively censoring their own lore for sensitivity or whatever the heck that means. So I really don't like how woke the company has become, and I was definitely afraid that the D&D movie would have some of that woke seepage infiltrating the film. And while that definitely is the case, it's not that bad and doesn't really affect the film nearly as much as I was afraid that it would, especially because of the statements that the writers made before the movie came out. It was a super weird way to promote your movie, to just automatically insult half your audience. I don't understand what that was about, but thankfully it wasn't that big of a deal in the film. So the movie does have issues, but primarily my gripes with the film aren't about its woke content. It's about just basic structure and storytelling. So what this movie does well is it's fun. Chris Pine is a great lead, and he's entertaining the whole time. And even Michelle Rodriguez as his barbarian sidekick, who gets just as much screen time as Chris Pine does, who I was initially worried about because I don't particularly like her as an actress. I didn't mind her presence in the film. I thought she, for the most part, played her role well, of the strong barbarian who doesn't talk much and just gets things done. There were a couple of scenes where she did have more dialogue, and it didn't work very well. But for most of the film, she was the silent henchman, and it worked. The rest of the cast is okay. They're not great. They're not horrible. And thankfully, they're not the emphasis either. I didn't particularly care for the wizard's character who does wild magic. Nothing against him. He just didn't have much of a personality and was very one-dimensional and had some rather weak moments of acting, but it wasn't terrible. And the same thing goes for the tiefling. Some of her dialogue was incredibly awkward and uncomfortable, but there wasn't a whole lot of it, so it was fine. Chris Pine's little girl was actually pretty good. I liked her. I liked her acting. She was fine. Hugh Grant was great, and I loved seeing him in the film, and he never disappoints. And I really loved the paladin character, whose name I'm not gonna try and pronounce. But his role in the film was actually fantastic, and he was just oozing charisma the entire time, which was disappointing because his role in the film is very small, and he leaves the group early for no reason at all. And I didn't like that because he was so much better than the other actors. So he was definitely underutilized and should have stayed with the party longer. The action in this movie is pretty good. It's nothing to write home about, but it's not horrible. There aren't too many cuts to ruin it, and some of the fights are actually pretty well thought out and executed and entertaining. The comedy works about 50% of the time, and there is way too much of it. And some of it does not land, and a lot of times they sacrifice the momentum of the story and world building for the sake of silly jokes that kind of pull you out of the film and don't really offer anything. The jokes that do land are really great, but a lot of them kind of fall flat. Sorry, I was supposed to be talking about the good things. The best part of this movie is that it really does try and honor D&D. There are some moments that are fantastic, and you can tell are servicing the story, but at the same time paying homage to the game itself and making fun of the mechanics just a little bit. And there's one moment in particular in this film that I absolutely loved and just made my day because it was just pulled straight from the tabletop. It's this wonderful scene that, again, I'm not spoiling anything about, but the group has to make a plan and everything keeps failing, and so they start thinking outside the box, which is what any D&D party will do in real life, and they try to exploit a magical item that was given to them previously in the movie or adventure, and they come up with a really ingenious way of accomplishing their goal while using these exploits, and it is absolutely satisfying to see. And at the end of that sequence, you can see the DM just saying, yes, I'm rewarding you for your creativity, but here's a giant wrench I'm throwing in your plans. And it is a perfect homage to D&D. It was my favorite part of the film. Unfortunately, there are a lot of negatives. While they do try and honor D&D, and there are a lot of great nods to the game and to the world, at the same time, there was too much of that. There was a lot of stuff being thrown at the screen, and I really don't think it makes the film accessible to normies. Like, I don't think my wife would like this movie at all. And so while I do appreciate them trying to throw in these Easter eggs, on one hand, that's great. And on the other hand, it was way too much. It felt like I was watching Ready Player One, which was not a great movie. The book was fantastic because the book was about a story that had Easter eggs thrown in, and it was fun. And the movie was about Easter eggs and had a story thrown in. And that's what this was. Like, there was so much going on that didn't need to be going on, but like and even me as a viewer, I'm like, yeah, okay, I know this and this and this and this, and it got tiring, and I'm like, I don't know if this movie's very accessible. There was one really, really great Easter egg / homage to the original D&D movie, which is horrible, but I absolutely love because I watched it when I was a kid and when I didn't have taste. That movie is ridiculous and horrible, but it's totally worth watching just for Jeremy Irons' performance. But there is one scene in that movie that is actually really good, and this movie totally nods back to that scene, which I really appreciated. I was nudging my friend in the theater, like, that's from the first movie. It's really good. So yeah, there were great moments and great nods, and some of them just went on for too long and kind of fell flat. The other big flaw in this movie is the villain, who has zero personality and is not menacing at all. It's this little skinny woman who's like, she does bad magic, but like doesn't. She's not scary, which was dumb because there was like a 5-minute scene where she was talking to her boss and taking orders from this other guy who was awesome and super intimidating, but for some reason he wasn't in the movie at all. He was just in that one scene talking to her, and he was scary, and she was very boring. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. There were moments that I absolutely loved, and I was like, yes, this is awesome. And then there were other moments that were just incredibly frustrating, and like, oh, why did you make that a joke? Like that ruins the whole thing you were going for. And so it could have been a whole lot better. But you know, like the bar is super low right now. Like, this was phenomenally better than Rings of Power. And the script was mostly good, but it definitely could have gone through just a couple more passes to point out some inconsistencies. Like, especially in the finale, there's some really, really dumb moments that could have easily been fixed in editing, or just with changing some of the dialogue that were it was so dumb, and it didn't need to be, and you're just like, what? That's kind of lazy, guys. So I enjoyed myself in the theater, but I wanted it to be better. I have high standards for movies, guys. It is a good sign, though, that I care so much about this, because it does mean that the movie did accomplish a lot. It's when a movie is so close to greatness and they miss it by a couple steps that gets me more passionate about a movie. When a movie is all bad, like, I can just make fun of it and call it stupid because it was terrible and there was no saving it. But I get really passionate when a movie was almost perfect. So it might sound like I'm ripping into this movie, and I am, but it's because I liked it that I wanted it to be better. Like, there's no saving Rings of Power. But yeah, good movie, and I hope it gets a sequel. It was fun. Anyway, that's it for now. If you want to really get into the spoilers, I go into it in detail on the Sunday live stream, which is not this week, but next week we'll definitely get into the nitty-gritty and discuss everything. So if you want those, tune in next Sunday. But that's it for this video. I like D&D. It was fine. It could have been better. It gets like a 6 or a 7. It's probably, yeah. It's like a 7 out. It's like a 7 out of 10.